For those of you who watched my Panasonic GH5 versus Fuji X-T3 comparison video, you already know that I bought into the Fuji ecosystem, and from everything I've been reading and watching, the 56mm 1.2 lens will reportedly change not just my life but the lives of the people that I photograph. It's supposed to be that good. So I finally caved and I got this lens, and I spent the weekend taking some photos which I want to share with you in this video. And in addition to the photos, I'll also look at the video performance of this lens. So what sets my review apart from everyone else's review? Well, first, thanks to my completely amateur status as a photographer, you're not going to see images that are done by a professional with decades of experience using 5 different models, shot in exotic locations with perfect lighting, like a 10-foot giant softbox outside in the daylight. I'm also not going to edit any of these photos, so you'll see everything straight out of the camera. So in no way, shape or form are my sample images showing you what a professional could actually achieve. Basically what I'm saying is it isn't one of those situations where you watch a review, you're amazed, you buy the product, you rush home, and you can't get anything remotely close. If you've watched the Everyday Dad's channel, you know his slogan is, if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Well, let's just say, if I can get photos like this, you can definitely get photos at least as good as this. So before we could look at the photos, let's just summarize the physical aspects of this lens. As I've come to expect from all the Fuji lenses, the build quality is impeccable, and just holding it, you can tell that you're holding quality glass. And continuing, what I love most about the Fuji lens system is this aperture ring that's controlling the aperture on the lens directly, and it's great tactile feedback. Now, I've seen some reviewers saying it's a little soft and you could easily sort of accidentally change it, but I'm not experiencing any of that. And because I'm not a professional, I find aperture priority to be my easiest everyday setting, and having this aperture ring makes shooting in this mode incredibly easy and convenient, as well as intuitive. Now, compared side by side with the Fuji 35mm, the 1.4, it definitely has a little more heft, but it's by no means heavy or unwieldy, and it's well balanced on the frame of my X-T3. I really wouldn't have a problem being out all day with this setup. So a word of warning regarding the images you're about to see. I overused the f1.2 depth of field, the perfect mark of an amateur, but partially it's because I wanted to see how this lens performs. Now, using 1.2 isn't great when you have more than one person in the shot or a fast-moving toddler who refuses to stand still. The focus area at 1.2 is razor thin. So if you have multiple moving subjects or multiple people in your photo, I'd recommend you go to about 2.8 instead. And I also experienced some issues on video at 1.2, which I'll show you in this video. Also, all the photos that I'm about to show you are shot in aperture priority mode, so I let the camera do its thing with ISO and shutter speed. So if you know what you're doing, you could probably do a lot better than just the automatic mode that I'm using. Okay, let's move on to the photos and video performance. As I mentioned, I didn't edit any of these photos, but I did shoot them in the Eterna profile, which is a flatter looking profile, as you can see here. And the same photo in the Chrome profile looks quite different, but overall I prefer the flatter look of Eterna. Regardless of your preference, the point is that you could still heavily edit these photos if you so desired. So you can see this is the Eterna profile that I used to capture, and there's Chrome, quite a different look. Now, I preferred the Eterna for myself, just being a flatter profile. The point being though that you could still edit these videos pretty heavily. So this was a great photo, especially the fact that I managed to adhere to the rule of thirds, so my photography skills are slowly improving. But shot at 1.2, you can see sort of the foreground compression and the plane where my daughter is being perfectly in focus, and then the background being blurry again. But just overall, just a phenomenal photo that I really appreciate and enjoy. This one is great as well, same setting, but now the foreground compression is more obvious, and you can sort of see the 3 planes, if you will, of the foreground compression, then the plane where my daughter is perfectly in focus, and then the background again being out of focus. So just a phenomenal photo, and I enjoy the composition. Just really thrilled with this picture, and really was a testament to the lens, or the power of this 56mm lens for me. Another photo that I'm just completely enthralled with, that I just love, this is the kind of photo that I might certainly blow out and film, print it out and put it on the wall. and print out for sure, because it's just such a great photo in my opinion. I'm a little biased because of the subject matter, but I really just love this photo. The perfect compression here, and then her eyes, the focus, thanks to the Fuji autofocus, did lock onto her eyes. And trust me, she was not sitting still for these photos, so it took a bit to kind of capture them right at that precise moment. But overall, also a great photo. Just a photo. Here's my wife holding my daughter. Sort of, you can see the trees again. I know I've overused the f1.2, more of a close-up, again, just trying to give you a sense of what that compression looks like at 1.2, and you know, the two of them sitting on the park bench. Now, I did want to take a few non-portrait photos, if you will, to give you a sense of some closer photography. It's obviously not a macro lens as such, but yeah, you can see me focusing on some leaves. Again, I'm doing it at 1.2, and I know it's not the ideal aperture for all these photos, but I just wanted to give you a sense of sort of how that performance looks. Over here, I took a photo of the tree bark, and again, it's showing off the 1.2 quite honestly, but you can see the narrow sliver of focus on the vertical where the bark is in focus, and then to the right of it and to the left of it, you see the out of focus areas. Again, as that razor thin focus area of the 1.2 comes into play. And that's why I'm telling you, you know, it's not good when you have multiple people in the photograph to try and shoot at 1.2 and get everybody in focus. And here's just another shot of the tree bark, again, just kind of showing you the lens is without a doubt sharp. You can see here as well with the berries in the foreground and the background. So this was the next day. You know, the previous day was very overcast. The next day, fortunately, we had some sun, and just took some phenomenal photos. And again, this is not by any stretch of the imagination professional. I didn't have any light boxes or flash or anything. This is just the Eterna profile 1.2 lens out there in the morning taking these photos. This photo, I turned my subjects around so that the sun was shining directly on them, just to give you a sense of, you know, the different lighting conditions. This one, when you zoom it in Capture One or Lightroom, it's incredibly sharp, and just having that light on them definitely helped the sharpness of the image, if you will. Just another photo, trying to, you know, with a moving toddler, you take a bunch of photos, trying to get them all done in focus. It's not always easy. This one, I let the light sort of hit the lens a little bit, so you can see a softer look overall on the photo. But I do like the way the light still sort of lights the head. You can see the little hairs standing up, and then of course bokeh in the background. Quite a decent photo. This photo, of course, I just love. Again, I'm biased. The subject matter, I think she's incredibly cute as a proud father, but I do think this is just a great photo as well. A little bit of light shining on her cheek, and again, the framing here is great, super sharp, with the depth of field here that's clearly quite visible and apparent. Another one which I really thought turned out great. I stopped down a little bit. This is not at 1.2 as far as I recall. I believe now it's going up to 2.8, so you see a little bit more of the background. And a little bit later I'll go through the entire range of apertures so that you can see them all. But another decent photo that I really like. Now, coming up are just two or three of my favorites from this day's photo shoot. This one, again, great. You can see some foreground. You know, it's a multi-layered photo, and that I've got some leaves here in the foreground that are just a little bit out of focus, and then my daughter, and then the background. Now, she's not 100% in focus here. This is the challenge when someone's not cooperating and standing perfectly still. But it's a great photo, a little bit of shadow and light being cast on her face. And again, just an overall super sharp image, and really nice overall. This photo, I mean, really is also just, again, I mean, I sound like a broken record. I keep calling these my favorite photos, but I just love some of the photos I got from this lens. This one, you know, what I really like about it, sort of light refraction sort of occurring in the front here, multi-layered photo as well, great lighting on her face. And then even, you know, just with my wife's arms there, you can see sort of a rim light, a natural rim light lighting up her arms, or this, you know, just the edge of her arms. And then the symbolism of of this photo as new parents is important too, where, this was my daughter's first day out, now that she's walking and kind of playing with nature, and I just find this almost symbolic as my wife sort of letting her go, but at the same time being there to support her. So I just loved the way this photo turned out. Now this next photo is probably, I think quite literally my favorite. Everything from the composition, the focus, the lighting, the bokeh in the background. This one just worked out phenomenally, and I'm going to be the first to admit that this is pure luck. I took 100 photos, and you pick out those 5, and it's a photo like this that makes all 100 well worthwhile. This one just is great. I wish YouTube would show you the true value of this photo. Maybe I'll put this down so you can download the raw file or the JPEG so you can see the clarity behind this photo. I'll try and zoom in here just to give you a better sense of it. I'm sure by the time this is produced, exported, rendered, and uploaded to YouTube, it's not going to look anywhere the same. But it's a great photo, not just for the sharpness or the clarity, but you can see the bokeh there. It's just fantastic bokeh, and overall the framing and everything of this photo I thought just worked out really, really great. So just an awesome photo, which quite honestly made the lens worth it to me. And here's another photo with the sun directly on them, just to give you a sense. So now I'm just going to walk through the different apertures so you can see the background changing and the general clarity changing. Now overall the gargoyle stayed sharp in focus throughout the entire range of apertures. I'd say probably around f8 was what I thought, the face was the sharpest, but overall it stayed sharp throughout the entire range, and you can see the background sort of becoming more in focus as we step through the range of apertures. I'll do the same thing, just time-lapse it more quickly and step through all of them, and you can see it's more obvious as that background changes and the focus on the face changes. Now, I did have a little bit of issues on video when I was trying to sort of focus on these gargoyles. And at 1.2, the focus area is just too thin. It's literally just the nose of this gargoyle that's in focus. So for video, the slightest, I guess, millimeter would affect the focus, and did cause the camera to bounce around a little bit as it would sort of try and lock on the right area of focus. You can see a little bit of sort of focus pulsing here as it struggles. So I wouldn't recommend 1.2. It worked a whole lot better at 2.8, again, because now the focus area was certainly far more, far wider. As you can see, this is a lot better performance. So if you're doing video, I'd recommend 2.8. Now, I did have one weird issue. When I went to f16 at a shutter speed of 48, it was just struggling to lock onto either one of these gargoyles. As you can see, terrible focus hunting, and I really can't explain why this happened. Now, subsequently, since recording this video, I understand there was just a new firmware update, but I believe that was actually for focus hunting at the lower apertures, so I'm not sure why it would cause this at the higher aperture. So now we moved indoor, and this was to show you, so we still get this sort of mild focus hunting, but I also wanted to let you hear the noise of the lens focusing, because I know some people are always concerned about the noise. So I'm going to rewind this little piece, and I'm going to keep quiet and amplify the volume and let you listen for the noise. I'll share a few more photos as this video nears the end. The million-dollar question becomes, is this lens worth it? And that's a question I cannot answer on your behalf, but I can talk about whether it's worth it to me. First though, if you're enjoying this content, please consider giving me a like, a comment, or a subscribe so that I can keep producing videos like these in the future. Now, if you've watched my other videos like the GH5 versus X-T3 comparison, you'll know that I'm all about capturing moments, and I place far less emphasis on all the technical minutiae of the lens or the product. Now, I understand that for many professionals, it's precisely these technical details that are important, but at the end of the day, I want to make sure I'm able to capture the style of images that I need without a very elaborate setup and a lot of complexity. Now, cost is always an issue when you're talking about value, and I appreciate that this lens isn't exactly cheap. Now, the equation is different if you're a professional generating money from your photography, but for people like me, for which this is a hobby, inevitably the cost becomes significant. The way I see it, just capturing 20 photos, fantastic photos that I'll print into a photo book that my daughter will have 50 years from now, means a unit cost of about $40 a photo. Now the reality is I'll take a ton more than 20 photos, but just trying to put the relative cost in perspective. And in that context, yes, I find value in this lens. Now, it's clearly not an everyday lens, for running after a toddler. But over the 2 days I went out to take these photos that I shared with you today, I captured a few of my best photos yet. In fact, there are 4 or 5 photos that I feel are some of the best photos I've ever taken. In these kind of photos which will live on in infamy within our household and that I hope will survive past this generation as my daughter hands it down in turn. And that was just from these 2 days. I can only imagine how many birthday parties, vacations, and special moments are yet to be captured. It isn't by chance that this channel is called Life Through a Lens. And when you view it in the context of preserving these special moments, you can either view this as a piece of glass that has some imperfections, or you can view it as something that is enabling what matters most to us. I'll leave you with a few more sample photos at the end of this video, but before I do, let me conclude with my summary. It's been said that nobody can take your memories away from you, but I venture to say that time does a remarkably good job at that. There are moments that I fear will inevitably fade away. So if you ask me if this lens is worth it, I'll tell you it was worth every single cent. When I look at both the photos I took and the significance of the moments I captured with my daughter, I feel this quote from Donna Tartt's The Goldfinch is on point. She was the golden thread running through everything, a lens that magnified beauty so that the whole world stood transfigured in relation to her and her alone. A lens that magnified beauty. I cannot think of a better description to sum up my thoughts, both of the lens and my daughter.